In a previous video, I highlighted a seeming inconsistency in Minecraft's lore. Minecraft's website claims that the Piglins mined all of the Netherite from the Nether, but both Netherite and ancient debris require either a diamond or Netherite pickaxe to be picked up. And there is no diamond ore in the Nether. Additionally, while the overworld does have abandoned mine shafts, there are no similar structures in the Nether, which would seem to cast further doubt on the Piglins' alleged mining operations. However, despite there being no diamond ore in the Nether, you can find damaged diamond pickaxes in Bastion remnants, so it's possible they were used to mine Netherite. But then, how did the diamonds for those pickaxes get to the Nether? One obvious potential answer is that, like the Netherite, all of the Nether diamonds must have been mined out. But then, shouldn't there be a block in the Nether similar to ancient debris, but instead of being used to craft a Netherite ingot, it would somehow make a diamond? Currently, there is no such block, and since a diamond can't be made by combining two materials in a crafting table similar to Netherite, or break down into anything smaller in the way that gold ingots can be broken down into gold nuggets, I don't foresee Minecraft adding such a block to the Nether. I suppose they could add a diamond ore specific to the Nether that needed to be picked up with silk touch and then smelted to produce a diamond, similar to Nether gold ore, but I also don't think that's likely for reasons which I will get to in a future video. Incidentally, there's also no iron ore in the Nether, so the Piglins wouldn't even be able to mine diamonds. I find that to be very odd since, unlike diamonds, iron ingots can be broken down into nuggets just like gold, so Mojang could have added a Nether iron ore that broke into iron nuggets, similar to Nether gold ore. In fact, Piglins can give you iron nuggets while bartering, and their crossbows should require an iron ingot because of the tripwire hook in the crossbow's crafting recipe, making the absence of an iron ore in the Nether even more puzzling. I find it difficult to believe that they could just forget to put iron in the Nether, if it's clear that Piglins use iron in their crossbows. After all, Mojang decided to say that Piglins got their string from Striders because players asked how the Piglins had string for their bows. This leads me to believe that the omission of another iron ore is intentional. So unless we're meant to assume that the ancient Nether had iron ore, which is now completely mined out, that would mean the Piglins couldn't have iron tools, much less diamond ones. However, with the addition of Nether fungi and blackstone, the Piglins could have used wood and stone tools, and ordinarily that would be it. But despite having no iron tools, the Piglins would have been able to mine gold. While normal stone and deep slate gold ore, as well as raw gold and regular gold blocks require at least an iron pickaxe to mine, Nether gold ore can be mined with any pickaxe including wood and stone. So while the Piglins still would have needed to collect 9 nuggets to craft 1 ingot unless they somehow had silk touch, it wouldn't have been that difficult to collect enough gold for tools and armor. For that matter, maybe the ancient Nether had more gold, but the Piglins mined a bunch of that along with the Netherite too. After all, just as you need 4 pieces of Netherite scrap to make 1 Netherite ingot, you need 9 gold nuggets from Nether gold ore to craft 1 ingot. Gold tools are faster than wood and stone, so it would make sense if the Piglins wanted to get as much of the stuff as they could, and gold armor would also be slightly better than the leather armor they may have been able to craft after hunting hoglins. However, this also means that the Piglins wouldn't have been able to pick up any solid gold blocks after they were placed down. Does that mean the gold blocks in Bastion remnants have special cultural significance since relocating them would be either difficult or impossible? I know I'd think twice before placing down a block if I knew I had no way to move it again, especially if it was a necessary ingredient for making better tools and armor. However, Nether gold ore being mineable with wooden and stone tools still doesn't explain the apparent absence of Nether iron ore or diamonds. And as I mentioned earlier, there are no abandoned Netherite mines in the Nether to mirror the abandoned mine shafts found in the overworld. I see 3 possible reasons for this. 1, there never were Netherite mines in the Nether. 2, the mines simply weren't added to the game yet. 3, they were destroyed and thus cannot be found today. A lot of work went into the Nether update, so I'm not super confident in option 2. However, they did say in a video that the Nether update was delayed, so maybe there are other features they have planned to add at another time. Maybe we would even see Nether iron ore then. As for option 3, the existence of Bastion remnants could hint that there were other structures which used to exist but no longer do. However, given the existence of ruined Nether portals and abandoned mine shafts, it's odd that there aren't abandoned abandoned or ruined netherite mines. Option 1 is the simplest and thus is probably the most likely, and besides, options 2 and 3 assume that mines would be necessary to get netherite. Currently, ancient debris only generates towards the bottom of the nether and never generates exposed to air. Did the ancient nether have netherite throughout the dimension and not just at the bottom of the world? In the nether today, you can find many blobs of exposed quartz and gold at most Y values. So then, why couldn't the ancient nether have had exposed netherite veins throughout it too? This would explain why ancient debris can only be found where it is most difficult to get to, at a Y value below the vast lava lakes and never exposed to air. However, another possible obvious explanation of this claim that the Piglins mined all of the netherite is that this is an instance of Minecraft using the literary device known as an unreliable narrator. If this is your first time hearing that phrase, an unreliable narrator is, simply put, a storyteller who cannot be trusted. Maybe they're intentionally lying to you, or maybe they're just misinformed themselves. Regardless, the end result is the same. You, the reader or audience member, need to evaluate and scrutinize each piece of information the narrator gives you, because you never know for sure which pieces you can trust. But does it make sense for Mojang to use an unreliable narrator? It's no secret that they want players to come up with their own stories for the Minecraft world, and they want players to try to piece things together for themselves based on what they observe and discover, and writers will use an unreliable narrator for exactly that reason, to encourage the audience to think critically for themselves about what they're reading and draw their own conclusions. It's a great way to engage an audience and keep them coming back for more, which is great for Mojang since they want players to continue being emotionally invested in Minecraft. And if you've read some articles from Minecraft's website, you've probably come across sections where the authors sounded unsure about something, or it was clear that they were exaggerating or even just making things up. Even in some of their YouTube videos, there is a character whose name is literally Narrator, who frequently gives false or misleading information. Minecraft literally has an unreliable narrator in their YouTube videos. It doesn't get much more on the nose than that. But with all of that being said, I don't think that's quite what this is. It would be easy to say, clearly the Piglins didn't actually mine the netherite since the best tools they would be able to get would be gold, and we don't see them mine blocks in the game. This page is just trying to trick us. But the issue is that ends up asking more questions than it answers. If it wasn't the Piglins, then who did mine the netherite? Why were they in the nether? Were they native to the nether, or did they come from another dimension? How did they find the netherite? How did they realize it was useful? Was there even netherite to be mined from the nether in the first place? No, I think this statement is accurate, or at least it's mostly accurate. After all, you can find diamond pickaxes in bastion remnants, so it makes sense that the Piglins could have used them. But this still doesn't answer where did the diamonds for making those pickaxes come from. Incidentally, the same iron and diamond gear found in bastion remnants can also be found in end cities. Since it's likely that the diamond gear in end cities was left behind by the ancient builders, it's reasonable to conclude that the ancient builders are also the source of the iron and diamonds found in bastion remnants and nether fortresses. Why do I bring up nether fortresses? Both cities and fortresses have similar treasure in their chests, including gold, iron, diamonds, and horse armor. I specifically think the horse armor is significant since there are no horses in the end or nether, and it appears bastion remnants do not have horse armor in their chests, despite having gold and iron just like fortresses and end cities. So I think it's reasonable to conclude that whoever built the end cities also built the nether fortresses. So how did the ancient builders get to the nether? Regardless of whether you agree with my assessment of where the builders were originally from, I think we can all agree they had to be in the overworld before they went to the nether. Making a nether portal in the end doesn't work, and you can't make obsidian in the nether since the water evaporates instantly. So currently the only dimension left would be the overworld. But how did the ancient builders even realize they could travel to the nether from the overworld? I have some ideas, but those will have to wait for another day since they aren't exactly relevant to the Piglins' mining operations. So then, why did the builders go to the nether? Based on my observations of the end dimension, I believe their motive was to find valuable resources. And if they were looking for more bedrock for their bedrock portals, surely the Nether, being entirely encapsulated in the stuff, would be a very valuable find indeed. As they searched the dimension for anything of value, they probably ended up gathering a lot of netherrack. And they surely experimented with the item. It was softer than the stone of the overworld. It had a much lower blast resistance and could even support the growth of nylium, similar to how dirt in the overworld can support mycelium. So while netherrack does require a pickaxe to mine and not a shovel, there are ways in which it is more similar to dirt than stone. We know from the changes coming to Minecraft in 1.19 that dirt and clay are related. Dirt can be turned into mud, which can in turn then be dried into clay. Clay can be broken into clay balls, and clay balls can be smelted into bricks. So it makes sense that the ancient builders realized they could smelt netherrack into bricks. Using this new material, they built their nether fortresses to provide a safe base of operations for their exploration. After all, with all its lava and fire, the Nether isn't a very hospitable place for most. At some point in their journeys, the builders had to have encountered the Piglins, sentient beings who were native to the Nether. The ancient builders likely anticipated that the Piglins would know a great deal more than they did about the dimension, and thus what resources could be found within. After establishing some way to communicate with the Piglins, the builders could have offered the Piglins some very tempting goods in exchange for information. Things like iron, diamonds, or even fire resistance potions, since there is no water in the Nether to make them. And Piglins are not immune to fire. Additionally, while the Nether does have gold in it today, and we may conclude that perhaps it had even more gold in the past, the builders may have been able to offer the Piglins more gold than they could have ever dreamed of obtaining normally. And with the introduction of iron and diamond tools, a way to move their gold blocks safely. But what would the Piglins offer in return? They could have warned the builders about parts of the Nether which were exceptionally dangerous. They also could have shown them how to hunt hoglins for food and leather. They might have even helped the builders learn how to use a strider to easily traverse the vast lava lakes. But what the builders were probably most impressed by was the netherite. The Piglins wouldn't have been able to mine it themselves, but they could have guessed that it was extremely durable and tough. For the builders, such a material could have a myriad of uses: better tools, weapons, armor, and more. They likely struck some sort of deal. The builders would supply the Piglins with gold, iron for their crossbows, as well as fire resistance potions and diamond gear for mining. Meanwhile, the Piglins would mine netherite for the builders so that they could strengthen their own diamond gear. This would explain why we don't see netherite blocks in Bastion remnants, why Piglins don't spawn with netherite gear, and why the only netherite we do find in Bastion remnants is netherite ingots. Most of it went to the ancient builders. That being said, it seems that this working relationship went on for a while. Piglins seemed to have a near infinite supply of fire resistance potions and iron ingots to barter with. The Piglins were getting their gold and other goods. The ancient builders were getting their netherite. It was all going so well. There was just one tiny problem. Until next time, take care.